Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. Just give it one more minute. I think we might be waiting for one person. All right, why don't we go ahead and get started. The first item is just going to be the approval of the November minutes. So Lisa sent those out last week. Hopefully everyone had a chance to take a look at them. Are there any comments or questions about the minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second. All right, any discussion?
I don't
I just
think
need-
we got 'em.
Favor?
I just need to abstain because I wasn't here, which I apologize
Okay.
for profusely. It was completely an issue on my end, so I'm sorry, guys.
Jason, I didn't get anything.
It should have come from Lisa on the 22nd with all the meeting materials.
I did get something from Lisa.
You
Well,
want me to resend right now?
sure, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just pop off and resend them.
I know there was something that came and then a follow-up saying there was a problem with the way it was coming and then you sent something else, Lisa, and maybe it was there and I missed it, which is possible.
Yeah, we had some technical difficulties this month.
Yeah, there were quite a few attachments. I don't know if you saw those. Did you get an email with, I think there were 5 or 6 attachments, David? If not, I can share my screen when we get to that point also.
I'm now looking at Lisa's. There are no attachments though.
Okay, I just resent it, so can you tell me if it comes through?
Sure.
But I do show you on my distribution list for the first time.
There it is. Yep, there's a whole bunch of stuff there. Yep.
Awesome.
Great. All right, are you okay if we approve the minutes?
Yes, I'm sure. It's fine.
Okay, all right. All right, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Just one
Okay.
abstention.
One abstention, yes. Okay. The next item is an update on the ESG. Quite a few things have happened since our last meeting, so I just wanted to give an update. If possible, Brian, if I'm able to share my screen here.
You should be able to.
Okay. Okay. So hopefully you're able to see the ESG update. So the first thing, I just wanted to give an update on the actions that we took last time in regards to our large cap managers. We did send all of the investment policy updates both to Wells Capital and Cornerstone, who are our large cap growth manager and large cap value manager. Wells Capital agreed to and implemented the fossil fuel restrictions. There was no immediate impact on the portfolio, but those restrictions are in place going forward. And Cornerstone agreed to and implemented the fossil fuel restrictions as well. I think we mentioned last time that they would be selling one holding, which was Chevron, which they did towards the end of December. And so they went ahead and replaced that with another holding. So that's been in place. I did talk to them last week. So they said that they've implemented that without any problems. The third one was the SSGA Enhanced Index, and they've completed that transition. That was done on January 11th. So they completely rolled that over into their fossil fuel-free index. So that's been completed as well. We did get the lower pricing that we had talked about. And so, you know, at the end of this quarter, we'll be able to come back and give some sort of update on how things are going so far. Any questions about the large cap managers? Great. So this one is a little more complicated. We approved the investment policy language last week. I met with DAHAB to kind of go over what the commission had approved, and they actually had a few suggestions and changes that they wanted us to make. Two of them I thought were, you know, kind of enhancements to what we had put in the language to give us a little more flexibility. One that I'll go over in more detail, DAHAB as our investment advisor is a co-fiduciary with us. And so I want to make sure that we're respectful of what they're comfortable with, because they're, you know, they're in the same boat as we are in regards to the plan. And so we met with Lisa Roberts, no, we met with Allison Davies in the city attorney's office and talked through the changes that they had proposed. She felt like it didn't affect at all what we were trying to accomplish. It just changed some of the wording that we were using, but it didn't restrict us in any way. It was just, there's some changes that DAHAB is a little more comfortable with as our advisor. And so I just wanted to go through them to see. And again, it doesn't change the intent of what we're doing, but it does change some of the wording that would be included in our investment policy statement. So the first one, the incorporation of ESG factors into the investment process, we had said will help maximize the plan. They preferred may help maximize the plan, because it might, but there's a possibility that it wouldn't, and they just didn't want us to definitively say that it would, because we can't predict the future. So that was the first change that they suggested. The other, we had put in there that we were going to review the manager ESG initiatives on an annual basis. And he suggested just changing that to a continual basis, so we wouldn't be locked in to have to do it every year, where you get to the end of the year and you've realized that you haven't reviewed it, and then you have to call the managers in and, you know, go through their ESG initiatives for the year. So if we did it on a continual basis, it could be something that we could just monitor as needed, and not be stuck reviewing every single one every year if we didn't want to or didn't feel like we needed to. So I felt like that was a good change. The biggest change is going to be here in the climate change section. So I'll let you look at that for a minute. Again, they essentially wanted us to use less certain language when we were talking about the potential impacts that climate change or the inclusion of fossil fuels might have on our portfolio. And so that's the main change that they were suggesting. So again, it doesn't change our ability to do any of the things that we wanted. It just changes some of the language in here. So any thoughts or questions about that?
Why did they feel that that sentence beginning with additionally was a problem?
I think maybe they don't agree with that sentence. Any other thoughts on the proposed changes?
No, I could accept them.
Yeah, I'm right.
Okay. Well, I guess if nobody is strongly opposed to the changes, would entertain a motion to accept the proposed changes to the investment policy statement.
So
I would
moved.
move that we accept the changes to the policy statement.
I would second that.
Great. All right, all in favor of accepting the changes?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed to accepting the changes? Okay, great. That passes. All right, thank you. The third update that I wanted to give, and I think, yeah, we'll need to probably vote on this after we talk about it. So, you know, we had kind of taken on the largest portion of the portfolio last time with the 3 large cap managers. The next largest portion of the portfolio is the bond portfolio, which is managed by Earnest Partners. They've been one of the longest standing managers in the portfolio, and they represent about $30 million. So I talked to them in early December to let them know what we had been working on over the last year or so and the changes that we had made with the large cap managers, just to get a sense from them, is this something that they would be open to, and could they possibly work with DAHAB to suggest some language that we might be able to add to their investment guidelines that would accomplish something similar in regards to fossil fuel companies and climate change. And so they did, and they were definitely open to the suggestions. They mentioned that they have done similar things for many of their other clients, not just in regards to climate change or fossil fuels, but other restrictions related to social issues or things like that. So this was nothing new to them, and they were happy to accommodate us. I talked to them about what specifically might be excluded from the portfolio if we did make some sort of restriction in regards to fossil fuels. They said that there were 2 securities that if we passed this, they would immediately sell that represented less than 1% of the portfolio. And there would be 2 other securities that did not hold fossil fuel reserves, which is the specific restriction that we passed, but they were in the energy sector and they were related to fossil fuels. And so those would require action by the commission on whether we wanted to grant exceptions or not. So that's something that we could come back with once they, give us the specific names if the commission wanted to review those and decide whether to grant exceptions or whether we just wanted them to sell those other 2 names as well. So this is pretty straightforward. I included in the email the entire investment policy that we've provided to Earnest Partners, but there are only 2 additions. So one would be in section 3 of those guidelines that basically just says they're prohibited from holding companies identified as having fossil fuel reserves. So that would cover the restriction and enforce kind of what we had passed previously. The other was a miscellaneous guideline where they talked about this a little bit in December when I spoke with them, that they would add something that indicates that they would look to promote positive environmental change through their investment decisions. And basically the way they describe that is if they're evaluating a basket of securities or two securities, and all else being equal, if one of the securities had some sort of environmental initiative, or perhaps it was a green bond or an affordable housing project that included some sort of green initiatives with it, they would select that one over a comparable bond that did not. So that was something else that they've done. They said that we actually already have some of these securities in our portfolio like that. So it's not necessarily something new that we would be adding, that they would just sort of enhance that initiative as well. So that is the end of the update. Any questions about Earnest Partners and the bond portfolio, and thoughts on whether the commission would like to kind of take the same step that we've taken with the large cap managers and extend that to the bond portfolio?
Jason, Scott here. I'm sorry if you covered this and I missed it, but is there fossil fuels in the Earnest portfolio at this point?
Did you say, are there fossil fuel companies in the portfolio? Yeah, there are 4 holdings right now. It represents less than 1% of the portfolio, and 2 of them would be sold, and 2 of them would require either an exception or action by the commission.
Okay, thank you.
Is this policy, other than what you just said, what it is or what it was? Did you hear me, Jason?
Jason, can you hear him?
Sorry, I think I cut out there for a minute.
Sorry, okay. David asked a question.
I can now. I didn't hear the question that David asked.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is this policy otherwise as it was?
Yeah, everything else in the policy is the same except for those 2 bullet points.
This is going to be strange, but under miscellaneous, item number 7,
Let me pull that up. Yes, are you going to ask what that is?
well, is that first word spelled right?
I don't think so.
I don't know why that jumped off the page at me, but it did.
If it's wrong, we can fix it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a nothing, but I've just never seen that word spelled that way. Otherwise, I understand what it's saying.
Okay, so generally, everybody seems okay with that. Basically, we're just extending the same actions that we've taken with the other managers, and just taking the next largest piece of the portfolio and doing the same.
No objection.
Okay. Well, is there a motion to approve the changes to the Earnest Partners policy statement?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. All right.
Before we move on, Jason, I have one quick question about one of the attachments, Addendum 5, Earnest Partners 4+, signed on January 7th, 21. And under Section 4, asset allocation, it just talks about fixed income. Is that all that piece of the portfolio is for Earnest? Is that just fixed income?
Sorry, was the question if Earnest Partners is just a fixed income manager?
Yeah.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
That makes it clear then. Thank you.
Okay, well, the next item is related to retirement disability. It's just a follow-up conversation from what we discussed last time. So I will turn it over to Lisa to lead that part of the conversation.
Thanks, Jason. Hey, everybody, thank you. So what I thought I would start with is a little recap from the November meeting, since it's been a couple months since we've discussed this, and also we had a couple absences last time. So if that's okay, that's where I'm going to begin. So last fall, Michelle Vineyard asked me to reach out to different localities in Virginia and also to the Virginia retirement system and basically get information about their disability retirement processes and compare them to ours. And I believe her reasoning behind it is that she came from a different locality that did things a little differently, and she wanted us to benchmark ourselves and, if possible, use best practices from other places in Virginia. So I reached out to 7 localities and the Virginia retirement system and went over pretty much the whole process and came up with some differences between our processes and most of the others. So I shared them with the commission and we discussed it, but we wanted to revisit it today. So I'm just going to kind of quickly go over the things that we looked at. So the first main one is that most of the localities in Virginia, when a person applies for disability retirement, there's an independent medical examination. And in Charlottesville, we haven't done that. Our code does allow us to, so that's something I think we should consider. And basically, Human Resources takes direction from the Retirement Commission when we change our processes. So we need you guys' input on this. So that's something that we want to think about. If we decide we do want to have an independent medical exam, there's 2 different schools of thoughts on it. So the first school of thought is that we have an independent contractor do it. And then the second is that we put together some sort of medical board and then assign someone from the medical board to do the examination. So we'd have to kind of figure out what we want to, how we want to handle it if we decide to go that way.
Can you just elaborate on what the scope of a medical board would be?
So when I talked to some different localities, they would have, because there's so many different kinds of disability, we would have to have a variety of doctors. So we would have to have a couple orthopedic doctors, maybe psychologists, psychiatrists, internists. So we would have to maybe have, I'm guessing 10 or 15 doctors. And then depending on what kind of problem or injury that the person had, we would assign a doctor based on the specialty.
And Lisa, to option
It will
one,
be at
the
the city's expense as well. Okay, go ahead. Scott?
I was just going to ask, Lisa, on option number 1, the independent contractor, there are firms that would have all of those resources under one umbrella?
They do. There are firms, and I've actually contacted 2 of them and gotten estimates on what that kind of thing would cost. And I'm happy to share that.
And is the cost on a per use basis, or you have them under contract?
Great question. So it's a per use basis. So if, say, we made this decision to go forward and then we never had anyone apply for retirement disability retirement, then we would never pay them anything. So it was only on an as needed basis.
Thank you.
Okay, so then once that decision's made, there's also the question of, should we ever re-examine someone who's gone on disability retirement? And our code, again, does allow us to, but we've never done it. So most of the localities I talked to do have that process in place. So it differed. Some do it once a year for 3 years. Some did it every year for 5 years. Some only did it when the medical examiner recommended it. So that's something we would have to consider. Then the next thing we talked about was the code says that because someone might not be able to be a police officer or a firefighter, that doesn't mean they can't get another job doing something completely different. And so the code says that if someone subsequently becomes employed, whether full-time or part-time, the allowance received shall be reduced. And there's a bunch of other language to it, but basically we can reduce their allowance based on what they're earning elsewhere. So right now we require them to send us a copy of their W-2. And if they don't, they have to send us a statement saying that they have not received compensation. So what I found is that most other localities require people to send in their full tax return, because the tax return will include other income other than W-2s. And so I think that's something we should also consider. Again, our code allows us to do this, but there's it's addressed in two different places in the code. And one part says request W-2s and the other says full tax return. So because it's different, we need direction from the commission on that. And then finally, right now we do not have an appeal process if a person is turned down, and we need to decide if we want to add an appeal process. So that is something that all of the other things I've talked about, we can do because it's already written into our code, but the appeal process is not. We would have to look at adding something to the code.
And that last example before that about in one place it says full tax returns and another place W-2s, would we want to clarify the code as well if we're going to be really clear?
Yes. So thank you for listening to my recap. And I thought you guys might have some questions since it's been a while since we discussed it. So does anyone want to open the discussion?
So I saw in the notes, and again, I apologize, that meeting was just a flake on my part, that you wanted to get input from, I guess, myself, maybe Captain Hatter, is that right? Or this public safety perspective? I'm not having, was there any discussion on these items before? Like, I certainly can go through and share like where I'm coming from, but I'm one person, and I'm curious of kind of what already was discussed, and I certainly would want to hear from, those people on the commission that this affects more directly, which would be, Mr. Henderson and Mr. Hatter.
Absolutely, I would love to hear their input too.
And Lisa, did you say that for all four of the examples you gave, that those are predominantly used by other municipalities in Virginia?
Yes. Yes. The majority, there are a couple that do things the way we do, but most implemented these changes or have already had these changes in place long before this.
Okay.
Just to throw it out there, generally speaking, when I read through this all before our meeting, I would be in support of all of these things, including the appeals piece. And I think that we should go with an outside contractor route rather than, for the size of the city and the frequency, I just think that the effort to go the other direction, I think is just too cumbersome. But that's, again, I'm just putting it out there as a starting point. I'm happy to engage in dialogue.
Sure. And actually, Heather, that brings up a good point, because some people might not be aware of how many people are on disability retirement. So right now we have 5. Mm-hmm. And they're all from the police department, and we have 1 pending.
And I guess whatever changes that are made, there's going to be a rollout where we communicate this to employees who are affected by this, and then it becomes effective when?
That is something for you all to decide, but I will just give a little more information since you asked that question. So for all the 5 people who are on disability retirement right now, when they received their approval letters, we included verbiage that said they will be required to undergo an annual medical examination. So they've already been notified that that is possible. And then in the letter, when they got approved, it did say we would require their W-2s. We did not say that they would be required to show their taxes. So that we would have to decide if we're going to go back and make those 5 people start to provide us their taxes, or if we're just going to start going forward requiring that. So Mr. Hatter or Mr. Henderson, do you guys have any input?
Yeah, good morning. I'll try to be brief because I got about 15 minutes and I have to leave. So yeah, I've had a little time to, get some input from specifically the folks in the department, trying to do a little research. And, one of the questions that I had was of the jurisdictions, and it may be on there and I just didn't look far enough, trying to compare apples to apples in Virginia. Which of the localities that we've looked into are independent cities, similar to Charlottesville?
That's a good question. So number one, VRS handles the majority of retirement plans. So because I got a list from Jason of places to contact, and then I on my own thought, well, what about Harrisonburg, and what about Waynesboro, and what about Blacksburg? And they were all under VRS. So VRS does do an independent exam, and they use an outside contractor, and they do a re-examination. The other places I contacted were Arlington, Danville, Fairfax County, Falls Church, Norfolk, Richmond, and Roanoke.
And they all fall under the independent cities?
Those are independent localities.
Okay.
And then VRS handles a wide variety of places in Virginia.
Okay.
Not just cities, they do school systems and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, independent cities meaning that they don't fall under the county that they were generally surrounded by. The second thing, as far as
Fairfax County is a county. That's
they're geographical anomaly.
I know, I'm from there. I went to school there.
But I think it's still going to be a process to, keep everything on par, understanding. I don't think anybody's opposed to change, and I think we want to make the best decision for the plan and for the individuals. I think some of the things that I came to have some concern with or question about, and as far as the like the medical reexamination, of course, going with an independent review board and what they may or may not say. I think we have to look at the psychological effects that, depending upon what caused the disability, if I may, the person's already going through the physical trauma, then following up with the psychological trauma of having to potentially relive or recap or rehash whatever's caused caused them to have to file a claim. I would say we would need to put in some sort of language I won't say a case by case basis, but if we know it's an obvious traumatic injury, whether psychological or physical, that we'd be wary of having folks come back to be reexamined, annually, biannually, whatever the case might be. So I think that was probably my biggest concern. I'm looking out for the mental welfare of the individuals that it may affect.
Sure. So if the independent examiner made a recommendation not to re-examine, we could decide not to. And then if they recommended re-examining, we could talk about it in the commission before we did it. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I don't know how we as I'm not a doctor. I'm an EMT. Right. And there might be somebody on here that is a doctor on the side too. But yeah, I don't know a whole lot about some of the medical boards and their stake in these. Of course, they would, I assume, try to benefit the commission or the plan as much as possible. If I don't know whether it was suspect or whether they would thought that someone was, I always go to the furthest extreme thinking that someone's trying to take advantage of the system. I would hope that, nobody is or was, but I don't, if the board were to say, yeah, you should examine them, I would have to go with, well, what would be the reasons that we need the individual needs the reexamination?
Okay. Well, I just did want to say that we aren't making these suggestions because we think anyone is taking advantage. We just wanted to have, just review the process, benchmark it, make sure we're using best practices and being consistent. So.
Yeah, and I understand. Excuse me. Yeah, I understand that. Like I said, I go to the worst case scenario, but as it's for excuse me, for the operational folks in PD and the fire department, the sheriff's office, things like that, to only have 5 people currently on disability retirement, I think that that says a lot. But we, of course, making sure that we're up to date and everybody knows what the expectations are, or what will be required if they were to file for the benefit.
Thank you so much for your input. Mr. Hatter, do you have any input?
Hi. Good morning, everybody. I think you guys have done exactly what I asked for about a year ago, to reach out to different agencies, see if there's a mechanism in place, and make sure that we are doing our due diligence to go check in on these people. And there's one other part to this that I wanted to bring up, and that's under our current policy. I know that we offer jobs within the city if they're unable to perform their current job. So let's say somebody is, they can't work in public safety because of an injury, but they can maybe work somewhere else inside of the city and fill an opening that they're qualified for. And I don't think that's been discussed. And I also agree with the outside contractor. That's kind of way I would, or independent contractor. I think that would be the way to go, not a medical board per se. I do like the idea of filing a tax return instead of just a W-2 or a sworn statement. And I think that follow-up appointments for up to 3 years is probably the way I would lean. After that, I think, most people would not be able to return. They'd have to go through training all over again. So that would be a moot point in my opinion. But yeah, up to 3 years, I would say, as follow-ups and reevaluations. And I just appreciate all the work you've done on this, Lisa, and Sarah. I know you were behind the scenes on some of that. So I think this is exactly what I was looking for. And I'd just like to talk a little more about the option of letting people still come to work in the city of Charlottesville, but even though it may not be public safety, in a different area or a different job.
Does anyone know if you have any experience in doing that in the past?
No, Scott, I don't think that we've ever done that. That we've ever, and I don't know who that responsibility would fall on. Would it go back to HR? Would they look at their qualifications, look at the current job openings or vacancies, and decide this person meets these qualifications, and we're going to let them continue to work in a different area?
And Joe,
But-
haven't you had circumstances within PD where people have gone to more desk job kind of scopes from the field because of one reason or another? Is that the case, or is that just more of a shorter term?
That's a very short term, up
Okay.
to 9 months, just like we would do. HR could probably explain this a little better than I, but right now, if someone can't return to duty, full duty within a 9-month period, basically they have to leave one way or another. They can either file for a medical disability retirement, or if they don't meet that standard, then they would be terminated. But yeah, that's a very short term. And then, the idea that we just move people to desk jobs, and basically what we use them for is telephone reporting units. So, somebody vandalized your mailbox, you could call, instead of having an officer come see you, they could call you on the telephone, take your report. What that does, though, if we were to do more and more of these, is that just takes away a police officer from the PD, and that affects operational status. Yeah, that's not, in my opinion, a good idea, Ms. Hill.
Yeah, and I just was more kind of the fact that you're asking about what other positions within the city. I think it's more logical that they could find a position within PD and other capacities that may not be in the field. Obviously, you do have a number of employees that aren't officers that are active in the field. That's why I was just asking, just as I think about what positions someone might qualify for within the organization that aren't involving them putting themselves at risk because of their injury.
Yeah, there are some civilianized positions that we have in PD, and we may be able to fill those with somebody like that, or move them to a different department within the city entirely. So, but yeah, I don't think that they could, if they're on medical or have applied and been approved for medical retirement or some disability, that they could remain an operational police officer. I think that would, yeah, they would have to be moved into a civilianized position, like accounts payable, accounts receivable. Yeah, there's a few jobs that could be taken by someone in that position.
Is that prohibited now?
No, it's, I think I think our current ordinances say that we can do that, and have over the last 5 of these. I just think that we've never done that.
I think to kind of go on that, to get on that, the fire department and the police department, the way there's the operations level, I think we have a problem with the, at least here, the reclassifying of positions for operational employees of the department and folks that fall into the administrative end. We have, similar to the police department, we've found, for instance, our community risk reduction, someone may not necessarily be able to go, we'll just say, fight fire, lift a cot, something to that extent. But they could go into our community risk reduction section and assist them in, prevention, plans review, investigations, things of that sort, where they're still a part of the operation of the department, but they're just not, say, on the street. We don't like to reclassify those operational positions for those sort of functions, because kind of like Mr. Hatter said, it takes away from people on the street. If we could increase the numbers that the department's allocated overall as far as positions, I think that would be great, because you would gain, you hate to lose the experience that you have in that field, but you lose a body in one place to put them in another, and that doesn't benefit the department anywhere.
Franklin, I think, I don't know about you guys, but I know we have several civilianized positions that work in administrative roles. I don't know how many you have over there, but I would assume we have at least 15 positions that are civilianized. And that's, our service division, administrative positions, counts. At least 15. And if there's an opening, that person could then, it wouldn't necessarily be a reclass. They would just fill that current open position. I just don't know how you're set up with civilianized positions.
Yeah, we currently only have 1, 2, 3, 4 civilian positions, meaning they wouldn't they don't qualify for the public safety benefit. The place where we end up take people off the street into non-IDLH operational positions, primarily to the community risk reduction section. I think we're kind of in a growing phase with that, with more and more functions needing to be done, because we're realizing that community risk reduction is a very broad umbrella, and having 1 or 2 more people to help do some of those functions, because they need the knowledge of the operational side, the suppression side, the EMS factors, but they can't necessarily, or may not necessarily, be able to physically perform those duties.
Scott, I hope that answered your question. I know it was kind of long, but yeah, we can, if there's a civilianized position, I think that, and they meet the qualifications, that, yeah, we should start within the department that they worked. And if that can be filled, I think that's the way to go. If not, do we offer them something else within the city that they may be qualified for?
I'm going to speak here on behalf of department directors out there. Probably shouldn't do this, but I think it's also important to understand that that there's required qualifications that are met for a person who's transferred, even in an administrative job, that they have the experience with SAP or other softwares and things like that, and that they can step right in. Most departments, if they're like ours, are really down to the bone, and everybody is a key operator. We want to make sure that anybody that gets plugged in is also on a day one key operator as well.
No, that makes perfect sense, Scott. I understand exactly what you're saying. I would not expect that someone who did not meet those qualifications or could not perform at the level that they needed to be, that we move them in there just to say, hey, we gave them a job to continue working. Again, like I said before, I think that would be up to HR to figure out if they meet those minimum qualifications and would be able to work further. But yeah, that's why I would say that if there's an opening within the department that they currently worked, either fire or police, that they should probably look at filling those first with that person. And then, yeah, that would be my suggestion.
Thanks, Joe.
Lisa?
Yeah.
What, if somebody goes on retirement because of a disability, what is that payment relative to what they made when they were working?
That is a great question. So, let's see. Sarah, are you?
Yeah, I mean, is it 100% or is it something less than that?
Yeah, sure, I can chime in. It's 66 2/3% of salary. Similar, exactly like what a workers' comp payment would be.
Thank you.
Sarah, that also includes medical benefits that the city would then pick up, plus the 66 2/3, and
That's
even
correct. Yes, that's correct.
even possibly the retiree's family. Is that correct?
That's
Or life.
correct. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so this extends even beyond regular retirement age. So we could be paying, yeah, there's some hidden costs there. It sounds like it's just 66 2/3, but we're also paying medical benefits for the entire family, which is, even though the city does a great job, and but it still kind of gets expensive.
Jason, where do you think we go from here?
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's enough consensus to move forward on the majority of these items. I mean, I know, personally, I'm supportive of an independent exam, hiring an outside contractor. I think we should amend the code to allow for, a tax return, and just to make that clearer. I think the only one that I'm not sure on is, I don't know that we need a medical exam every year, kind of similar to what Markel was saying. A year later, if a doctor just evaluated them, I don't know if we're going to get a different result, but certainly at some point, whether it's 3 years after, and then make a determination of whether it's, still considered permanent or not. But just making them jump through hoops every year, I don't know if I would necessarily be supportive of that step. I would need more information on what an appeals process would look like. Who is the appeals board? If we have an independent exam and their, doctor has provided a review and the commission makes a decision, is there some other body that they're appealing to then? Or would we require them to have new information or another exam or something like that? So I think I would need more detail on that, but I do wonder if there's some of these that we could go ahead and give some direction to HR on to, start making those changes.
And I could agree with everything you just said. I do think on the independent exam, I looked at some other plans and they did every year for 3 years, and then they extended it to 3 years or 5 years after that. But initially, I mean, depending on you'd have to have the option, depending on how serious. If somebody's in a wheelchair, clearly you don't need to do an exam every year. But initially, I think every year for a few years and then extend it beyond that. Otherwise, I think all of that is perfectly reasonable. The appeals and everything you just went through.
So do we need to vote on just the independent examination as a starting point, or can we just get a consensus that everyone is okay with that?
I think it would be healthy to have a vote on the record for that.
Okay.
Probably want to handle them, I think, piece by piece, the examination and re-examinations. And the tax returns. I think both of those pieces could be handled today. I don't think the appeal piece could be
Do
handled.
we need someone to make a motion? I'm not sure since I'm not a member.
One more question before we get that far is, would these be retroactive and apply to those already on medical disability, or would it be starting from the time we vote?
To me, it seems disingenuous to go backwards and modify what you have as basically a contract with somebody.
I agree.
Okay, so
I
we're
think
just,
except for those things that have been identified, because it sounds like in the communication Lisa said that has gone to those that it applies to, that there was some flex that they could have X, Y, Z. So I think those cases where it's already been established, I'm comfortable with, but trying to add a new requirement, I'm less comfortable with.
That's well
I-
said.
I agree with that.
Agree.
so we'll go forward from today. If there's a vote that we will do an independent medical exam, then we'll just start going forward today with that. But I
Well,
think the
I
codes
think-
have to be some,
Lisa, I thought you said that that language was already in everyone's previous claim, that we could require a annual evaluation.
so
So
all
that would
standards
stay.
that's gone out, they have been told they can be required to undergo a re-examination at our expense.
Yeah, so that language already exists, so I think that covers that. I think the only language that didn't exist was the requirement to provide a tax return. So those individuals already who have filed a claim or have received approval for a claim, let's put it that way, would not have to file a tax return. They would just continue to provide a W-2 or a sworn statement.
Okay.
But moving forward, others, unless the board wanted to make that a change in that language.
Didn't you say that it was written both ways?
It is,
In
it's
the
written
code.
both ways, so we need clarification.
But what you've communicated to the actual individuals was a requirement for W-2s.
Yes.
So that's where I think the hesitation is.
Yes.
And I agree with moving forward, being more clear about that, but I'm hesitant about the retroactivity.
Okay, and then as for possibly having an appeal process, I can gather language on that and maybe we could revisit that at another meeting.
I think it'd be helpful to understand what appeal, what are the skill set of these people who are evaluating the appeal. I mean, we have a personnel appeals board right now that I'm not sure the scope of.
No,
So that's something the city council can,
that's,
or no?
No, I'm just saying, like, we have like groups. I'm just trying to understand, like, how unique is this appeals process from things that we're already doing?
well, I would, I'll put,
I'm more trying to get a sense for, like, what is the
No.
qualifications of anybody that we'd be looking at in a future appeals process specific to this versus what we already have existing. Not saying we're going to use what we have existing, but I just don't know what the qualifications would be to ensure that we have a stand-up appeals process for who's going to assess this, or is it an outside group? I just don't know.
well, I'd like to jump in here about that because you do not want the Personnel Appeals Board involved in this process. That's a statutorily driven board for grievances. So you'd want a separate board. I don't think you want to have two. I don't think you want a board that is statutorily required by the state for the grievance process to be the same board to hear these appeals.
Okay.
You're probably going to be looking for different expertise. I mean,
Yeah.
my guess is if there's an appeals process for this, I mean, you'd want some medical expertise required on your board. I think it would only be fair, again, however the commission, and I won't be here when you do it, but I think it's only fair that when I'm giving you a practical sense of what I see every day, these things are sometimes going to be highly technical concerning medical knowledge, and I would hate to have an appeals board that did not have at least one MD on there who has the capacity to evaluate the appeal from the technical sense. Not saying everyone would have to be a physician, but I can't see having an appeals process about this particular issue without some medical expertise on that board.
And I was just using it as an example. Apologies, I just derailed us a bit. But I really just think it's important for us to all understand what is the expertise that's needed and what are other municipalities doing to ensure appropriate evaluation in an appeals process. And I don't know if it's something like number bullet point 2, is it an outside group we can engage with to do that? Or is it something we need to create ourselves? And I would again probably err on the side of, given the frequency, like maybe there's groups that do this that we can tap into. So I just think there's still some questions there.
Is,
So I can research that. Go ahead.
is this something, Lisa, that you could gather some follow-up information on?
Yes, I was just going to offer to do some follow-up research on what other people are doing for their appeals.
Perfect. Thanks, Heather.
Lisa,
Yes.
if there's an outside contractor that we would use for bullet point 2, it seems like that one and the last one, if there's an appeal with a need for medical expertise of some sort, would they not also have that, maybe a different person, not the same person that would have ruled on it initially, but somebody who could rule on it again?
Yeah, I will investigate that. I didn't ask the question when I spoke to the outside contractors, but I can definitely go back and get more information from them to see if they offer that as a service.
I would think that those, that they could not be affiliated with one another in any way.
It seems like
so
it's jumping into the judge's seat.
Right. So I think that's going to take a lot more discussion on what an appeals board would look like. Maybe even best served by a medical board that has no affiliation with the outside or independent assessor. So, yeah, and Mr. Blair, I know you're not acting in capacity of a city attorney, but your input would, or the city attorney's office would probably be heavily involved in drafting something like that.
I guess at this point today, we don't need to take, I mean, when we just have Lisa pull forward just all the language like you did today, Jason, with the other attachment where you kind of just show the actual language and we voted on that we've given some direction here to HR. And so now let's let them come back and just show us the exact language and what procedures would have to change kind of more fully. And then we can vote on that maybe our next meeting. What do you think?
I agree.
Yeah, and I agree that we could probably take care of the at the next meeting, the re-examinations and doctor's visits and things like that. And we might not get through the appeals next meeting, but we'll have more information.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
just to recap, I'm gonna gather more information on the appeals process, and I'm also gonna pull together some language for the other issues that we talked about. And then we could, next time, you guys can vote individually on each question. Is that the way
Or
I
if we're lucky enough that we're all in agreement, we can do it at once. Just kidding.
Okay, well,
That
thanks.
sounds great. Thank you so much for
the.
the legwork. This has been really informative. And I know this is something that Captain Hatter had raised a while back, and it's just great to kind of have this in front of us. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And while I have all of your attention, I just wanted to give a really quick update because we have a vacancy on the Retirement Commission, if that's okay.
Yes, and I feel like I've done some legwork on this.
So I found out that so far we've not had any applicants for the open position. It's posted on the city website and the council is accepting applications through March 5th. And if we have applications, then the council can make appointments on March 15th.
Okay.
Lisa,
So I think I actually had approached someone about that. And I think that at that time council hadn't posted, or their office hadn't posted the application because there was a lull between that. But I will follow up on at least one option, maybe more.
there are categories of members. What category is the open?
This is a citizen rep, I believe.
It's a citizen rep, but the person needs to have some sort of financial or retirement administration background.
It has to be a citizen of Charlottesville, I would imagine, right?
I
I
believe.
think, I think this one does.
It also,
Yes.
I don't think this one is required to live in the city.
Because of their expertise.
I think.
Yeah, David's spot is definitely required. I feel like we have had someone who resided in the county that was a citizen, but I mean, it's certainly council's preference to have a citizen.
Mhm.
And anyone I'd be reaching out to would be a citizen. But we welcome more applicants if you think of anyone.
Are there two of those positions typically, Heather? Are there two of those?
Well, we have, you're a citizen rep, that's
Right.
strictly a citizen. And then this is a little bit more broad, but it's an at-large kind of role. It's not someone tied to the organization. Because this is what David had before.
Oh, the other David.
Yes, sorry. Yes. Yes. All right, and I apologize. I do have to hop off right now, but I will, thank you for that reminder, Lisa. I will follow up on anyone that I think might apply to that.
Great.
And again, the piece of expertise here is financial planning.
Financial background, retirement administration background, or banking maybe. I can send an email out that from the code and just copy it straight from the code to everyone so you all know.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you all, and I'm sorry I have to cut right now. We'll
Thank
see you.
Bye.
I think that was the end of the agenda. Are there any other items for discussion?
Yes. So I'm looking at this preliminary performance summary.
Oh, yeah.
So at what point do we rebalance?
There are bands that are placed on those percentages. And I did talk to Greg about that because some of them have run a little bit. They are all within the allowable bands, although some of them are getting close because they've outperformed the market.
Right.
I would say usually we do a rebalance once a year. As we approach the end of the fiscal year, we usually have to draw down some of the proceeds from the fund to pay some of the plan expenses. And so we use that as an opportunity to rebalance at the same time. So probably 3 or 4 months from now, we would go ahead and do all of that all at once. But you're right, some of them are getting close.
Yeah, it looks like if you took stuff from the top and moved it to the bottom, you'd be about right.
Yeah, so if it turns out at the end of the fiscal year that we need some cash to kind of true up those expenses, we would take it from those that are overweight currently.
And as we look at the allocations, we're looking at the right 2 columns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not too far off.
No.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm stunned that we've survived the pandemic this well. I was stunned.
I emailed Greg because I had to double check on that. The Wells Capital number, I mean, that's the fiscal year number. Their calendar year number was 40%. They returned 40% in 2020.
I will make a little joke here. Were we invested in GameStop? Man,
No.
what is it now? I think they're up 18 times their share price based on the futures this morning from like January 1.
Those people are dancing. They had no plan for this.
Wow.
Cool. Good for them. Good for us.
And Tesla.
We do have someone who has applied for disability retirement. So there's a chance that we might need to call a special meeting to review it with Allison Davies right now. So I will have to keep you guys informed on that. It would be closed. Is that correct, Jason?
Yeah, we would start the meeting and immediately go into closed session.
Okay.
Okay, great. Well, there's nothing else. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I would move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
you all.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Especially thank you, Lisa.
Ready?